Hi everyone, I'm Lynda Artesani, here to teach accounting professionals how to better serve your clients with QuickBooks Payroll. Our agenda for today is payroll as an advisory service. We're going to talk about QuickBooks ecosystems, getting to know QuickBooks Online Payroll and the different and various SKUs, whether it's core, premium, or elite. And then we're going to implement the workflow. We'll dive right in with payroll as an advisory service. I love this quote, and it's by Will Hill. He's an MBA and a product manager of tax professional advisories at Thomson Reuters. Advisory is a relationship, not a task. A real advisory accountant puts themselves into that relationship space. That's the workflow. I know advisory is more or less a buzzword this year and probably the year before. And it really is something that's a lot of people tell me, a lot of our members in our group just tell us that we don't know what that even means. And if you think of it in terms of advisory being a relationship, it's more of how can you help your client grow and prosper and become profitable. I like to think of myself not even using that advisory term or that advisory hat. I like to tell my client I'm their partner in their firm. I'm here to help them in whatever way I can with what my skills are to help them grow. So the first stage of being that trusted advisor or that partner in the firm is communicating with your client. And this is one of the things that you kind of have to practice to be able to help your client really know what they need to do to help, how you can help your client really grow as a firm and maybe grow smarter. You need to listen to them. Take the time to sit with the customer and talk to them, but let them talk first. And like I said, this is a skill you have to really work on. I know myself was one of the hardest things when I would get in a relationship with a client, and that first relationship where you're kind of scoping it out. It's so easy to want to tell them everything you know, and they start to talk and you would interrupt them and say, I can help you here, I can help you there. But it's better, like this old adage, you have two ears and one mouth for a reason. It's the time you need to listen to them. They want to be heard. They've called you for a purpose. And when you have that moment to listen and take in everything that they're telling you, that's where you can really shine as the advisor. I find that listening to their pain points and maybe asking them, why did you call me? What is the reason behind calling me? What is the issues that you're having? And then having that time to talk to them and really help them figure out what they need and what their needs are. Getting that visualization in mind and understanding where they want to be after they hire you. So that advisory conversation does start with listening to the client, but then my next step is always analyzing what they're doing now and seeing where it's not working. Taking that time to talk to them and understand exactly where maybe there's stop gaps in their workflow and where you help them really look through the process and make it better. A lot of times for me, that is asking the staff to take an old-fashioned line pad and write down what they do. And then maybe finding out, is Joe doing this work and Mary doing this work? And then there's an overlap there. And how can we maybe make the workflow process work better? And these are the things you don't think of as you think of the old days of being an accountant or bookkeeper. You would just be handling the finances in the back numbers, but really to help them grow, we got to start to think more in a forward trajectory, basically. And then you can offer them some options for them to maybe give them some choices and how they can move forward. So when you get into client payroll, it can definitely be an advisory service. I've got a few examples here that I think you can think of them as additional services you can provide to your client. Really, really super important when you're looking at advisory for the client. You want to get paid for it, right? Number one, maybe sometimes the client's hiring you and they think that should all be included in your bookkeeping engagement or your accounting engagement. How do you make it so that you can get paid for it? And there's a few ways that you can do that. You can put this into your scope or your engagement letter, that this is additional, line item it out, and then put it in there that this is an add-on. And if they want to have that, you can refer back. If it ends up in the future, maybe they don't have payroll initially, and they want to add payroll, you can refer them back to the original engagement where this was not part of the engagement initially, but we will charge you this or X for this service. So you're going to get paid for it. It's important. They're paying for your time you took to learn this stuff. Making sure you pick the clients not had payroll, and this is happening a lot, especially this time of the year as you start to analyze. Maybe you've got some of these smaller firms that are an LLC and they're taking draws, or maybe they're a sole proprietor, and they need to really maybe start to think about looking at their books and saying, hey, maybe if you're an LLC, you might want to change to being an LLC that acts as an S Corp and start to add that payroll, and then they're not paying for that unemployment tax, which goes really nowhere for the person, unlike a Social Security, which you'll end up getting when you retire. But also you can add in, if they've got a profit there, maybe they want to add the payroll, pay the taxes, and then also add some maybe retirement plan in there. So they can also use that if they're doing a SEP program, they can take that off of their fees and take that off their profit and then not to pay the taxes on it. If you work with firms like I do, I specialize with working with attorneys and law firms. They have some pretty complex compensation plans. So another way that you can advise them and get them as far as for helping in their payroll realm of getting paid, it's also a way to start to look at their accounting platform as a whole and setting it up maybe using class coding or custom fields, some way that you can start to track the data points you need to get that report out of the accounting platform and not out of an Excel spreadsheet, which is what I see a lot of times with working with attorneys or accounting in one place, and then they're manually using data entry to do the calculations for their compensation programs. It just doesn't work. It doesn't always tie back. When I end up trying to tie the numbers back, a lot of times there's errors, maybe even in the formulas, and it's just not a great way to do that kind of work. So as that advisor, you're able to start to track those points right out of the system. So you can validate those numbers to the source of the bank. Really important. Maybe your client needs some human resource, has some human resource needs. Those are definitely things that you want to start to look at as you start to work with maybe larger firms. This might be a way that you can help them. And don't forget, we're accountants, we're bookkeepers. We don't have to know everything. This is where you find these places, and maybe with payroll, you're able to find a payroll platform that has some of these things included, where you've got people who specialize in human resources that can help your client. Same thing goes with 401ks. They can be, retirement plans can be complex. How can you help your customer when it comes to trying to make decisions? Do they need a 401k? Do they need a set? How do they set it up for their firm to work the best? I can't know everything. So if I hire somebody, I can get a good program in place that they can work with people. That's all they do for a living. Getting the job description. This is one that I used to be a generalist for many years. Worked with plenty of firms that were contractors and home remodelers. And that code for workers' comp is key. If it's incorrect, it can be pretty costly. So getting someone, maybe a payroll program that includes some service to get the job descriptions written up, and then you're knowing which one belongs to who, will help you in choosing that workers' comp code. That's going to save your client money. This is where your advisory role is really important, because we're going to help our client save money and they'll make more money in the long run. Looking at one metric that I like to analyze a lot of times with my clients, and if they're growing, they're coming to me and they're like, they've got people working overtime, they don't know what to do. You can take a look at labor expenses, a percentage of the total revenue. A lot of times for my clients I work with, the labor or the wages is the highest expense on their books. A lot of other firms, a lot of other industries, it's the same thing. How can you find a way to find that metric? Pull that right out of the reporting. We've got a great place in QuickBooks Online Advanced, and even if you're working with QuickBooks and you've got the accountant version, you're going to be able to use some of those report tools to be able to show your client what it costs to maybe take a lot of stuff out of overtime, maybe hire somebody if it's part-time. You'll be able to show them that you can save them money there. So overtime analysis is also another advisory way that you can help your customer and add that to your repertoire of services. So selecting the right payroll product offering is definitely a place that you can help your customer, because it can be very confusing. So some questions you will want to ask your potential payroll provider. What's the cost of the service? And that's usually the first question we get asked, right? When they call us and they say, first thing out of their mouth a lot of times is, what is it going to cost me to have my bookkeeping done or my accounting done? This is a question you're going to want to find out from the payroll provider. What's it cost? One of the things you're going to look at with this is, what is the cost going to be per week? Is it per week? Is it per month? You want to look at that. Is it per paycheck, which I think I'll get into? What is the payment structure? Are they paying? Is this something you're going to be paying per payroll run, which might be a factor where you might want to change maybe to bi-weekly, bi-monthly, not bi-weekly, bi-monthly, or monthly payroll if that's a little bit less. Maybe they're getting paid every week. You want to factor that in when you're looking and analyzing different payroll providers. Does the payroll provider require a contract? Some do. It's an important question to ask as you're starting to scope out what payroll company you're going to choose for your customer. Find out this contract and then get out of it. If you're not happy, you want to be able to get out of it. If there's a contract there, you might be locked in for a year, so you really want to ask that question. Is there a setup fee? So this is a great time of year to change payroll providers if you're not happy with the one you have or it's not meeting your needs, or you're looking to find a way to maybe make the workflow process better, or maybe even save your client some money. The setup fee is important when you start to work with payroll. If you're changing mid-year, if you're watching this later on mid-year, there is you're using one payroll company, you're changing to the other, you're going to want to ask that question about the setup fee because there may be fees involved with tying the past numbers to the new system. What's the fee for each employee in each check? Because sometimes there's a payroll fee included in that processing. Are there additional fees at year end? And I can tell you a little story there. I worked with a client that thought, when I brought it to his attention that this would be a good idea to change payroll companies, when we started looking at the numbers, he was like, oh my goodness, this costs $20 more a month. Why would I want to pay $20 more a month? But when I analyzed the records, when you looked at it, at year end, they charged for W-2s, they charged for the filing at the end of the year, the 940 filing, they charged, I think, for every envelope they licked, every stamp they put on the envelopes. It ended up costing quite a bit more for that other service. It's just hidden in that weekly fee. And you might want to look into the fact that there may be additional fees at year end. Is it a full service or a self-service product that you're buying? Is it a product? Is it cheaper because you have to do the tax filings? Those are things you want to ask and questions you want to ask. Maybe you want to have that ability to do the tax filing, but maybe you might want to have this just be fully automated and use technology to its fullest potential. Does your client require time tracking? And that's a key question to ask, because if they've got hourly employees, they're probably going to want some sort of time tracking. And how can you help them with the time tracking that maybe that's in place now? And how can you change over to help them implement a better workflow? Does your client need tax advice and filing services? So if they're asking you to do the filings, I've spoken do it like however my last, and I tell them, I can't even think about doing payroll manually anymore because the service it's going to cost you less for me to get the service in place to automate that. So if you just talk to them in that type of way, if it takes me a lot of hours to do it manually, why would I want to do it manually, especially in this day? Does the client need human resources? And we've just talked about that, but maybe the client has a bigger need. The bigger the firm, we generally like to see some sort of HR services included in the payroll package because it's important. The need will be there, and I don't have the time to know all these things, so it's important to maybe have that in place. Does the client need benefits administration? So if you're starting to look at health benefits, vision benefits, anything like that, if they need to have somebody taking care of that, you might want to factor that into your looking at the different payroll providers and see if that's included in the package that you're looking at. Again, this is all about apples to apples and not apples to oranges. So the same thing here. What are the hours of payroll support? And do you have like a dedicated line? These are things you want to look into because some payroll doesn't have that 24/7 availability. And how important is that for you and for your client? So human resource needs. You might think, well, my client really doesn't need that, but sometimes you have to factor in that there's probably a need, especially with the more mid-market firms. I'm finding that there's definitely a need for that. And the biggest reason is for compliance with state and local laws. You want to make sure that all those compliance, I mean, we wear compliance on our sleeve. It's the heart of our business when you work with attorneys, and it really should be for all industries. And you want to make sure that all the laws are being complied to. You want to make sure that your client is handling all of those things, and those things are being handled for them. They don't have time to be looking up these things. So it's important to have a service including this kind of a feature. Employee handbooks is another thing. And a lot of times when you meet with your client, they don't even think about that. They don't even realize that they should really have an employee handbook, but it's really important to have. There's a lot of things that can happen in a business, especially as it's growing. You want to have all those bases covered so that if anything does occur inside the firm or anything employee related, you can refer back to the handbook and let them know, yes, this is not allowed at our firm. And giving that employee handbook is really important. Sometimes you'll find if you've got that employee handbook in place, you can get a little bit of a discount on your other insurances because they know that you're on top of all the employee rules and you have some systems set up in place. HR forms and documents, you don't have to worry about finding them for your client. If you've got human resources, you don't have to worry about knowing that you got the right documents in place. That would be included in your human resource needs. So you can see just by these few examples, it's pretty important to have that extra person in charge that just does this for a living. And then stay on top of any changes to the tax laws. And there's been a lot of changes recently, and it varies state by state. So if you're a cloud accountant like I am, you want to make sure that you're able to, if I've got a client in California where the rules are a lot more complex, I don't have the time to really study every state that every client that I have works in. It's important to have some resource that they can stay on top of that so I don't have to worry about it. And more importantly, my client doesn't have to worry about it. And they can also include creating custom job descriptions, which will help me with workflow, but it will also help with that important workers' comp code that we're going to be needing for workers' compensation insurance. And the labor poster, of course, we all get those envelopes in the mail about the labor poster, but you do have to have it posted. They will provide that for you. So we get into group health benefits here. Important, very important if you get into the larger firms or even the smaller firms, it's important to have, if you have health benefits, how do you know which one to pick? How do you know if you need a PEO or an HMO? If you have a payroll service that includes group health benefits, you can talk directly to somebody that's going to answer those questions for you. When you start to get into those types of areas of expertise, it's like I said, it's hard to know everything, but if you can pass that to a payroll provider that has this type of service included in the payroll offering, it's really a valuable resource. I know when I was looking for insurance for my firm and for my staff, it's important for me was to find the right thing that worked best for me. Not only is the pricing important, there's also going to be a cost involved in sharing a price with the employee might have to pay, but also finding a way to look at maybe what your deductibles are going to be. It's really complex, and it's really important to find a way to have someone help you navigate these waters. Is the plan offered nationwide? So if you're getting one of those health insurance plans, it's really affordable, but it only covers doctors in a specific area, and you have to get permission if you have to go outside that offering or area. You want to be able to know that your plan includes going nationwide. Is there benefit plan administration included inside the fee? So a lot of times it might be an outside fee. So asking those questions when you're looking at payroll is really important to know that if it's included or not inside the fee. So this is some areas you might want to look at when you start to look at payroll plans that include benefit administration. So some other features to include or to consider, which is also part of this, is workers' compensation is something that can be inclusive inside that same payroll platform. A lot of the companies include working with an outside firm that does workers' compensation into it. It has a relationship with AP Indigo, a really highly revered company that gives you some good affordable pricing. If you are looking at workers' compensation as helping your client through workers' compensation, which is totally at audit time and advisory service, if you've ever had to go through and managed through a workers' compensation audit, you'll know that you need to make sure that the class codes are right. You need to make sure that the payroll will tie back. If you use a program that's included in your accounting platform, it makes life a lot easier. You don't have to step outside the program to enter numbers manually. It makes audit time, saves so much time for you in the audit period. And like I said, AP Indigo gives you some really great pricing included with that, because they do some searching around for the best price for the client. Retirement or 401k plans, if you can get a program including these two key points, it's really helpful for the customer. I know when I've had a few customers this year that had very profitable years, and they are very happy with moving towards paying some money towards retirement and maybe lowering their amount of money that they're going to have to pay taxes on their profit for the year. It's helpful to have somebody that can help guide them through that. And some of the plans, it's pretty important. When we're working with law firms, we have some pretty complex retirement plans. Sometimes we walk in the door and knowing that and finding that key person to talk to ask questions. If you make a mistake on this kind of stuff, it can be really, you can have some pretty expensive fees or fines if it's not set up properly. And we kind of ran into that not too long ago, where we had a client that didn't have his 401k properly recorded in their books. So it's important to get the person, or maybe the person involved in payroll, that has that knowledge of 401k plans that can make sure that your setup is right. And tax penalty protection is always important. I find this is one of my areas where I'm trying to figure out which payroll provider to get for my client, and then finding out that the tax penalty protection is in place is a really helpful tool. A lot of clients are afraid when it comes to taxes and payroll taxes, and they just don't want any problems. Having that penalty protection in place, I think Intuit's is up to like $25,000. So if you get a fine or something's not properly processed in time, or whatever fines come along, you would pay the fine, and then Intuit would return the money. The payroll program would, if you're in the highest tier. So it's something to factor in, and it's part of, is your client going to need that to sleep at night? So it's something you can offer to them. They might not even know that exists. So it's a good thing to have in place. I've had a few clients have some penalties put forth their way, and they've had the payroll program and it's been reimbursed and it works out fine. They don't have to worry about it. You have to pay the fine, but they get reimbursed. So it works out well. And the capability to pay outside contractors is one of the benefits if you get a program that has that availability, where you can do a direct deposit to a contractor. So a lot of companies do this. We're in a gig economy. There's a lot of businesses, they pay subcontractors or contractors, whatever the term will be. So this is a nice way, if it's part of the payroll platform, that you have the ability to pay the contractor partly inside the payroll program. It's not payroll, but the ability to make that direct payment to the contractor, so you can pay them really quickly electronically. So it's really safe. You're not writing a paper check. Those are things you might want to consider when choosing your payroll program. E-filing 1099s. We're almost at that time of the year, 1099s, and it's definitely a place that it's that time of the year that kind of drives all of us accountants and bookkeepers crazy. But for certain, if you can get that e-filing, it makes life easier. I don't ever want to go back to the days of typing those into a typewriter days, having to line up all the boxes. Having the e-file is just so nice. And once you've got it set up with your paying the contractors, it's literally running a few reports and then just a few clicks and you're golden for doing your e-filing. Autos payroll for salaried employees. I was so happy when I saw this feature. A lot of the firms I work with have salaried employees, and knowing the fact that I can just go and set it and forget it. I put the employees in, I put the salary in, and then I just go forward and let it go and let it roll. I get an email once a week or once a month saying, hey, your payroll's about to run. It can't get a more smoother process. And the fact that technology is to that place that I don't have to click anything, I think this is like the best thing ever. So getting auto payroll, if it's part of your platform, that's wonderful. It might be an added fee. So look into your program to see if it's included inside your program. Some features you might not realize. Direct deposit functionality. I think that this is one of the places, and I can remember working with contractors and going back to my contractor days, but I had a client that they used to charge like $1 or $2 for a direct deposit. And the client's like, I'm not paying that. I don't want to pay that. and then brought it to his attention that the client's employees, if they take time during the workday to run off and go cash their paycheck, which many of them did, how much is it costing you per hour for all these guys to go off and cash their paycheck at the bank on Friday? And how much is direct deposit? When you start to look at that, most of the plans now, they just charge one fee per check, and that's all included. So look into that in case there's an extra fee for certain when you're comparing programs, but you definitely want to make sure that direct deposit, I think most people are going for direct deposit functionality unless they don't have a checking account, which can happen in some industries. So in those industries that have the people don't have a checking account, there's a debit card option that's available where you can have a debit card available to give to the employee, and it just gets refilled on payday. So they're not having to go to the bank, they're not having to deal with a paper check. They just have the debit card refilled, and it's available. The funds are available to them. There's usually no charge if Intuit doesn't charge. If they lose a card, they will replace the card and shut the card off. So it's a nice feature. I don't think a lot of people know about, but it is available. Same day or next day direct deposit. Now I can tell you this has saved my firm where we maybe forgot to run a payroll, and at the last second it's like, oh my goodness, thank God I'm on the East Coast and the payroll is run on the West Coast. I'm able to run that payroll. The client doesn't even know because I was able to run the payroll and get the direct deposit in maybe the next day or the same day, depending on where you are and the timing. And is there a mobile app? So if I have to do payroll for a client and I have to track the hours and run the payroll for the client, and I'm on vacation, do I have the availability to kind of sit back on the beach in Tahiti and send my payroll out? Yes, if you have that ability in your payroll, kind of nice to be able to do that for your client. It's also nice for the client to be able to run payroll from their mobile app. And is there a time tracking app? Like I mentioned before, something like a T-Sheets is really nice to have. And if the app is available, again, if you're working with a contractor or maybe someone that has staff that works off-site and on the road, the availability to put it on their phone and track their time per job and be able to switch that over, it's important. Those are important things to factor in when you're looking at finding a good payroll service as wearing that advisory hat for your client. I'm going to shift gears a little bit and go into the QuickBooks ecosystem and why QuickBooks is one of those really great accounting software for all types of businesses. So the QuickBooks Online ecosystem, QuickBooks is an accounting platform. It's a very robust one. If you're looking at the an accounting platform like QuickBooks, it's an open platform and it's designed that you can modify it and really specialize the platform for the industry that you work in. If you work with, like for me, working with attorneys, I layer on the apps that work for my type of client. But if you're working with inventory, there's ways to add the apps to make it inventory specific. So now you're taking that general accounting platform and making it work for whatever industry that the client is in. And knowing these apps is advisory work, right? We can find out which ones work. There's thousands and thousands of apps, probably hundreds, thousands. I don't even know the total, but I can tell you that there's so many, it can become a little bit of app overload. If you're a niched out practice, finding the right workflow and sticking to it, you don't have to be, reinventing the wheel with every client. So this is a nice way to be able to figure out what works for your client, and then you're helping them understand how to make this ecosystem work smoothly, like it's just one unit, one piece. They won't even know that there's outside apps really involved in the whole process. Apps.com is the website that Intuit has where the apps have to go through a vetting process. So you're getting a really established app, something that's been around a bit and is, usually a really great app to use. You can see the reviews on it. They now have Premier apps, and those are more for QuickBooks Online Advanced. That's the program I use with all my clients. It's got all the bells and whistles. I love it. And it's some of the Premier apps that are listed are they're just special. They're the ones that are really, we know work the best. So that's kind of a place you can look first if you're looking under a specific industry for an app that many people find to be one of the best ones. And so does Intuit, they back it. And you want to make sure that your program is easily customizable. So when you're looking at working with QuickBooks, the platform is easily customizable by adding those apps to QuickBooks to make it, I always like to say it's like putting the attorney's suit on QuickBooks Online Advanced for me. QuickBooks Online Advanced works for all different kinds of industries, but now I'm making it work specifically for attorneys when I add those apps. I try to identify my clients' needs by talking to them, seeing what they had going now, looking at their current process and seeing how I can maybe make it better and automated. A lot of times you meet a client, and like I mentioned before with the Excel spreadsheets, but a lot of times I find that they're doing things very manually and they don't even realize that those things are out there and they're accessible to automate the process. Sometimes the client will be a little bit afraid of automation, but know that if they're afraid of it, you might want to just tell them, look, when we start to add pieces of automation using technology that's available today, we're not only improving it because we're making it so we don't have to do the manual processes, but it also, the improvement comes with less errors, right? So when you take out the manual, it always makes the process work better and more efficiently, but also more accurately. So looking at your client's needs is definitely a place. And I don't stop with just the accounting platform. I will work and look at ways. I'm always searching with my niche to find ways to help my customers with finding out where I can help them in their job too, as well as mine. So that's another way that you can help your client. There might be ways to automate outside of the accounting system. And that's where they kind of turn to us. Sometimes I'm always amazed that when a client reaches out to me and they ask me a question about something that has nothing to do with accounting, but they feel comfortable because they know I'm on top of the technology, which is where that cloud accounting hat comes from. And how do you save data entry? And this is important because there's ways to work with the system that you're able to maybe take some of that automation. It might take some of those manual tasks away from somebody's job, but then it opens up a door for them to be able to do something more important for the firm and also take away some of the real manual boring jobs that they may have been doing in the past. So it saves on the data entry. Just adding something as simple as a bill payment system might make the job easier and again, more accurate. And how do you automate the processes? So how do you look at where your client's at now, look at their current workflow? Sometimes I use an app. I actually use an app that's like a whiteboard, but it's an electronic whiteboard. And I have all my clients kind of get some sticky notes. There's different colored sticky notes, and I'll do a Zoom meeting with them and say, okay, let's start to really think outside the box. How can we make this better? What processes do you want to automate? And then you just have them write on the sticky notes and add them onto that one white electronic whiteboard that we use in Zoom. And then we just kind of collaborate on it. We just have a brainstorming session, and then we sit back and we analyze it and figure out how maybe we can work on it. And then maybe my homework is to find a way to automate those processes. And it's really fun to do that with your clients that they may not even know that some of these systems exist. And how do you add those apps on and make them work as one ecosystem? And that's kind of our job, to make it so that they don't even realize that I've got like a lien law added onto my system, or maybe a receipt bank or something like that. They know those are all there, but I've connected all the pieces, so they just feed into each other. So here's an example of some of the premier apps that are out there, and this is kind of a new feature, but it's pretty interesting. Of course, teaching time tracking. QuickBooks Payroll and HR benefits, number one provider for small businesses. That is my lien law for legal billing. These are some that I use. Salesforce is a great app to use if you've got a client that needs to really have some beefy way to track their leads and follow all that straight through their platform. It's now connected to QuickBooks, so there's ways to track how the lead comes in the door and how well it does, and track your customers as they come through, whether they become a customer or not. So it's something you might want to look into and really learn. Take the time to learn these apps before you start to add them on to your customer, but then you can be knowledgeable when you have that conversation. You'll know what's out there and what would work best for your client. So we'll get to know a little bit about the QuickBooks Online Payroll ecosystem and find out how this is the new lineup that we're going to look at today. We've got a brand new lineup, and of course the most common one is the core payroll. It's the least expensive. It's a good entry point for the smaller firm. It's a full service, so you can use it as full service, but you can also use this as a platform you control. A lot of times I've had clients where maybe the cash flow is a little bit tight. So they can also, it has the ability to control when those taxes are paid. They have the auto payroll feature, which I mentioned earlier, which I think is fabulous. You can also add the health benefits for your team 401k plans, and you can have an expert product support. That means you'll have that dedicated person when you call up to, well, not dedicated, but you'll have that person that will be on the phone that will be able to help you. You've got that line that you can call. And they do have next day direct deposit. So even in the lower SKU here, the lowest product offering, you have full service and you have support and you have next day direct deposit, which is important. And of course, the auto payroll. So full service payroll is the middle tier. It's the one I think most of my customers are in, not all, but it includes the automated taxes and forms. Your auto payroll is in this one as well. You can get health benefits for your team, so that is there in place. If you find that you need to have the health benefit administration, you might want to go with this one because of that feature alone, especially if the firm's got multiple employees and they're going to be offering health benefits. It's nice to have that support staff. So you might not even want to offer to your client the lower one if they're to this point where they need this extra feature. The 401k plans are available. That expert product support is so important. And then this one also includes the same day direct deposit. Remember that one I mentioned that kind of saved me because I forgot to run payroll and I had to run it and it worked. I got through and the client didn't even know that I had forgotten it was after 5 o'clock, but I got through because I'm on the East Coast. Workers' comp administration is also included in this one. So you're going to have that person that's going to be available to help you with taking care of tackling some of those features. And that's also, again, with AP Indigo, but it's nice to have that person around that will help you with putting all those pieces together because workers' comp can be complex. HR support center. So now you're getting into not just having HR available, but having the support center. So having that place to go to help with maybe the documents and things like that. Expert setup and review. It's an additional fee with full service, but it's nice to have that piece available so that you have those extra set of eyes. It's very affordable if you need to add that. And it's nice to have that. And time tracking on the go means you've got T-Sheets. So T-Sheets is included in this offering. So there's a lot included in this full service payroll, premium payroll feature. Now we'll move on to Elite Payroll. Elite Payroll is the creme de la creme. It is full service payroll, but it's got all the bells and whistles. So this is one more from my law firm mid-market clients, I think. It's one of the ones, and it could be for any client, really. You could offer this to any client if they need all this help with these different things. Do they need help with auto payroll? Do they need the health benefits for the team? The 401k. So all those things that were in the prior one are there. Are included, but now you've got the payroll set up included, and it's the white glove treatment. So you're going to have that if you're moving halfway through the year and you're changing payroll providers for whatever reason. They're going to take those figures out of the books and tie them back so that the whole year will be with this payroll system. They have 24-hour, 7-day expert product support. So you're going to have that more dedicated line where you're going to get that higher tiered support system in place. Tracking time is also there in projects on the go. So you've got that extra layer there with T-Sheets. Tax penalty protection. And this is where if your client says, I really want this, I'm afraid of not being compliant on my payroll taxes. I'm afraid of things not happening on time. And I also don't want to worry about if something gets messed up. Am I covered? It's covered here with this feature. And then you've got a personal HR advisor. So this is where you're stepping up from that premier to that full service, because now you've got the dedicated person to really help you one-on-one, which helps us as the advisor to help our clients. Here's an example of what type of workflow you can build for your client. And this is just an example. A lot of these are the ones I use and how they can feed in. So here's my QuickBooks app in the center. This is my accounting platform, but now I can add QuickBooks Payroll. One of the features I think is the most powerful of QuickBooks Payroll, besides all the things I've mentioned today, is the fact that it's baked right into the product. So the client just, if they're working inside of QuickBooks, they can run payroll by just going right into QuickBooks, going to that left toolbar and grabbing the tab to go in and run payroll right from inside the product. They don't have to remember to log in to an outside website. And it's really one of the things that makes it easier for me to get a client involved in using that program, because it's all in one. A lot of clients don't want to be bothered with all where the outside apps are. They want to really be right inside one place. Less apps sometimes is better. Obviously, I use them over time in billing. That keeps most of the people outside of QuickBooks. I let all the attorneys live inside of that, and then all that data, the time tracking, feeds into QuickBooks, and that can be really any app for any client, depending on the type of firm that you're with. It will help you there. Receipt Bank obviously is another app I use for pushing in the bills and things so that I don't have to type the numbers in. Bill.com is available so that if you want to pay bills electronically, it allows you to pay it and you don't have to worry about it. And of course, we mentioned T-sheets too. So that's just an example of the online ecosystem. So advisory services always starts with listening. So these are key takeaways. Payroll and benefits are advisory services, and you should absolutely get paid for it. Review the options and explore the choices. So get that data in from them, listen to them, learn from them, talk to them, find out what they're doing now, what's working, what's not working, and then really help them and give them options to figure out what would work best for their firm. Explore the choices and let them choose. And see what will work in your ecosystem, right? If you're working in a niche practice, you want to make sure that you have the ability to pick your workflow and then stick to it. And then create the new workflow for the client. If it's a client that's new to you and you need to make it slightly different for them, this is the way to go. And you want to implement the changes to help them and guide them through to make it a smooth process. That's it for me. Now let's answer some of your questions. I use the one that it's all set up for me. So I kind of call it the lazy version, but I love the elite because it lets me do everything for it. So, I mean, that's my answer on that question. We have another one, and it just said, does Lynda simply find the payroll provider and charge the clients to have it done somewhere else? And yeah, basically, you know, back in the day, because I've been doing this for over 25 years now as an accountant and, you know, my own business for 21 years, I used to do payroll myself. I had spreadsheets and I did it manually, and it was QuickBooks Desktop, and there was a lot there. And I somewhere along the line realized it was cost effective to have it done with a payroll provider, and QuickBooks was my logical choice because it's my only software that I use for my accounting platform. Next question was, I'm familiar with the offerings and I'm familiar with the offerings and already refer almost all my clients to QBO payroll services. I was hoping for some insight on how to better support clients who subscribe. So it sounds like their clients are just going in and clicking and setting themselves up. I'm really not sure on that question, but if the best way to support them, I think, is first of all, sit down with them. And like I mentioned in the webinar, have that conversation, listen to what they talk about, most clients are afraid of payroll, mostly because they either don't know what to pay themselves. A lot of, especially the smaller companies, they don't pay themselves. So you kind of need to talk to them about that. Find out what their entity is. If they're an LLC, or if they're a sole proprietor and they're doing great and they're making money, maybe have that conversation, maybe drag the tax professional in and say, hey, my client really should be maybe an LLC that acts as an S Corp. And now it's time to put a payroll together. I have a client right now that I'm going to be working with for that. We looked at his records. It's kind of new to me. And it was like, you really should do this because you can pay yourself a payroll, you're going to pay your taxes, and you can get yourself a retirement plan. And those are all ways to really help the client with advisory services because they're afraid. They don't want to have any mistakes. They're afraid anything that has to do with the IRS will kind of make them shudder. So you're there to partner with them and really be that support person. I like to say that, like, I am the scaffolding. I'm that person that's, you have a problem, come to me. I want to help you. And that's really where it comes into play. We have one here for you, Sandy, and it's, does QuickBooks Online Payroll export to QuickBooks Desktop for PC and Mac?
Yeah, that's a great question. We get this one a lot. So obviously, if you're using the version of our online payroll that's attached to QuickBooks Online, you wouldn't need to export a desktop. But what we're seeing is a significant amount of accountants and their clients who want to use online payroll and use desktop QuickBooks. And so now we offer a standalone version of all of our payroll products, Core, Premium, and Elite, that you can get without the QuickBooks Online accounting. And it does have the ability to export to QuickBooks Desktop now too, so that we can meet your needs.
I remember when I first heard about the standalone product, and it's kind of cool because what's really nice about using that product is that if a client comes to you and they're really small and they're like, they need payroll, but they don't really, maybe they're doing it on a spreadsheet and they have whatever they're using, they can grow into QuickBooks as well, because once it's inside, payroll is in there. It's just a matter of upgrading the system, right?
Yeah, the accounting side of it. Yeah.
So that's such a cool thing. I don't think there's any other product out there like that.
Yeah, no, there's not any of them. And it's a really great way to start for your super small businesses, right?
Yeah, and there's plenty of people out there now. I think, especially this year, I think a lot of people have just kind of pivoted and said, I am just I'm going to follow my dream and follow my heart and do this thing. And maybe that's how I started my business. It was, I'm going to try this on my own on the side. I had a full-time job, and all of a sudden it became, I had 2 full-time jobs, and I never looked back. So if anybody wants to follow their dream and start their business, that's a great option for payroll if they need payroll for their business. One of the questions here is, how do I add owner health contribution to the W-2 using QBO Payroll? And one of the great things about using the QBO Payroll, especially now, it's the new lineup, everything's full service. So it's a setup thing, and there is going to be training with learning how to use QuickBooks Online Payroll inside your ProAdvisor page. And it's very simple to follow. As you get inside the employee section, you can get and set all those things up, the different types of pay types and the 401k and your health contributions. And then that will all be on your W-2 because it's full service. You're going to get your W-2s done. You don't have to have, God, I remember the days of having to do all the W-2s too. It was very stressful. I remember
very
the days
stressful time of the year.
It was not fun. And the same is, how do you add a 401k employer contribution? Truly, when you get into the module inside of QuickBooks Online Payroll, it's just follow the steps. They actually walk you through it just like any other part of QuickBooks. They ask you questions, you answer it, and it just kind of goes right through it. I got one for you though, Sandy. If we have a salaried payroll and an hourly payroll on 2 different payroll schedules, are we able to use auto payroll? Oh my gosh, my favorite feature, for the salary payroll only?
So yeah, that's a great question. So auto payroll is a brand new feature, right? We launched it last year with our new lineup. It allows you to set your payroll and just to run automatically for you, right? When we first launched this feature, we focused on salaried companies with only salary employees. So companies that have S Corps. I have a friend that I do her payroll, and she's on a different payroll service. I'm moving her to this so I can set up her S Corps employee contribution. It just runs automatically. It gets a little bit more complicated when you start to think about hourly employees and how we manage hours and how you would approve those hours before it runs automatically. So we're going slowly in the hourly space. So right now, if your company has all salary or all salary and default hours set for your employees, the auto payroll feature is available to you. So when you're setting up, like Lynda said, when you're setting up all of your employee information, you can set the default hours to a certain amount. So if you have hourly employees that always work 30 hours or 20 hours, you can set that up in their employee setup, and then you can turn on auto payroll for that company and it will run automatically. If you don't have default hours set, then we don't offer that feature yet. But again, we're working hard at leveraging our partnership and the fact that T-Sheets now is embedded and comes with our premium and elite subscription so that we can really power hourly employees with auto payroll also.
In auto payroll, I love because most of it, obviously I work with attorneys. Most everybody's on a salary, even the staff, most of them are, the entire firm is. So when they hire me, I help them get all set up with QuickBooks. And this is the best time of the year to start to look at that for your client as an advisory service and get it started now. Don't wait till January. It's best to do it now. And then if it's salary like that, you truly set it and forget it. Like you get an email and they'll say, hey, it's time to run your payroll. This is what it's going to cost. And this is the amount and all that. And it just happens. Like it's great. And everybody's on direct deposit. I mean, you could not make it more automated. And that is your best technology win ever, if you ask me.
Yeah, we're leaning in heavily on the automation. And I think that when you combine that, right, when you combine that feature with full service taxes, it's totally hands off. Your payroll's totally hands off. We do it all for you.
It's great. And you know, the one thing that I forgot about, but I used to work with contractors, you know, home remodelers and things like that. And I forgot about, sometimes they would have these people that would work with them and they didn't have a checking account. And I forgot about the debit card. So the other way you can pay them out. You still have that, right? The debit card? Yeah, they just refill the debit card. That was wonderful. So how does the 1099 function work? Are independent contractors entered as a vendor and then entered through payroll? So it's an independent contractor is somebody that you're hiring that has their own business, and you enter them as a vendor because they are a vendor. They have their own company. And what happens is you enter them, but it is still kind of inside of your payroll section. It's a separate tab. You have to enter their, you get their information, their W-9, put that in before you pay them. And then you're able to do the 1099s right through QuickBooks. It's very simple. There's a little bit of setup there, but again, it's the same thing. You just go in and you can actually do it now. Like we had weekly sessions for QB Community Live when we were doing our show, and we actually went in and demonstrated how simple it is to pick all the different sections that are now on the 1099 because they changed it, and now we've got 1099 NEC for a non-employee compensation, which is what these typically land under. So yeah, you can definitely do it. It's right in the same payroll section, just a separate tab. And actually, if you've not been in the payroll tab in a while, you're going to see that there's quite a bit of things under there between workers' comp and health insurance and all those little offerings and little things that you should probably check out.
Yeah, the two plugs I'll give to that, now that you mentioned that, is contractor also has direct deposit, right? So you can pay your contractors electronically, which is a huge benefit, I think, for for your clients. And then second is we have a new compliance tab in the payroll that is going to talk about all the year-end stuff, create your W-2 checklist, give you the latest information on PPP and other compliance changes that are coming at the year-end. It's a great resource for you to use with your clients. I
love direct deposit. That feature alone, when you're working with contractors, is amazing because most of the time, especially like when I worked with the contractors, when I had, work with a home remodeler and the electrician would come and do the work, and it'd be like the boss would come in and go, Lynda, I need a check right now. He just put the last, wire together and he needed to be paid immediately. And we have to do that because we gave him for the next job. Now we have this way of doing it. And with being direct deposit. You don't even have to worry about like cutting a check, anything. It's like a check. We love no checks.
Yes, no
And
paper.
this question kind of rolls into what we were just talking about is if you pay contractors via payroll service, who's responsible for the workers' compensation? And Matthew and I had done a few webinars on workers' comp for AP Indigo, which is one of the this is the company that you all use with QuickBooks. And the contractor is a contractor, and he has his own business. He or she has their own business. They are responsible for their own workers' comp. However, you pay them, you have to get that paperwork from them to show that they are covered during the time the job is being done. So again, this is advisory, right? You have to, a lot of times clients don't know this. So when they come in and you pay the contractor, you want that paperwork for your contractor, and it has to be in the date range of when the job has been done. And if you have that and they prove that they have insurance, you don't have to pay for it. But guess what? If you don't have that paperwork, your insurance company will make you pay for their workers' comp.
Yeah, I think that's a great example, Lynda, of the advisory services that accountants can provide directly to their clients that adds value above and beyond what we can do as the payroll provider. That's
Absolutely.
a great question.
Absolutely. Can the QuickBooks Payroll Service take out the appropriate taxes for each state? And this is a question that I've had happen with quite a few clients have asked me. For example, if a company is in Tennessee, especially with this remote world we're in, but the employee lives across the state line in the next state over in Georgia, how does that work with QuickBooks?
Yeah, this is a hot question right now because of so many employees are remote and are moving, and it's creating a lot of churn for our employers. And so we're getting a lot of these questions right now. And so this is one of the huge benefits of using full service payroll, any one of our core premium or elite offerings. We do this automatically for you. You just need to make sure we're going back to employee setup. Employee setup is the key to everything. We just need to make sure your employee setup properly reflects the state and address that the employee lives at and the proper work location. And then the system will know whether there's a reciprocity agreement with the states, what income tax to withhold, what unemployment to withhold, and it all happens automatically for you. And then we'll trigger the proper state forms to make sure you're withholding and paying the taxes and filing the forms on time. And then also it all flows seamlessly onto your W-2s. That's
awesome. Yeah, it's important, right? Because you want to be compliant. That's our job as accountants.
Yep.
I love this one too. If there's an error made and you are able to correct it. If an error is made and you're able to correct it, or you need to contact QBO help to do that. So if you find there's an error, that was a complaint I've heard from former users. If there's an error in your payroll for whatever reason, I mean, sometimes things happen. We're all human. If there's an error, if you're in the elite, the error and any penalties would be covered by Intuit, but you would have to pay it. The IRS makes the business owner pay it, and then you're reimbursed. Premier, what's the difference, Sandy?
So Premier doesn't have the tax penalty protection, and so we'll correct it for you. We can even help negotiate what's wrong with the IRS or the state agency, but you would be responsible for the penalties, obviously, as well as the tax. The client would be responsible. In Premium, we cover your penalties and interest for any errors made, whether it's our mistake or whether you made a mistake. And so that's one of the huge benefits of Elite. And I think the second part of the question they're asking is whether you have self-serve capability to make those payroll corrections in the product. And this is one of the things about having a full service payroll offering is some of those abilities to backdate after the fact payroll or void or delete payrolls that impact tax payments or forms are still somewhat locked down, and we ask you to contact support so that we can make sure all the changes are made properly, and that we work with you to make sure that any late tax payments are made or any tax credits that are created are properly applied. We are working very closely, working very hard to open up more of that functionality to accountants only, so they can do more of these corrections on their own without having to reach out to with us.
Can we say I got one last question we're going to end on, and I do want everybody to know that all these questions will get answered. So we didn't have time to do them all, but they will get answered. This one is, we are done with ADP and we would like to go to QBO Payroll as soon as possible. Yeah. Is it too late to move forward and transition for our next payroll and still have you file for Q4 in 2020?
We have not filed, but the time is ticking, right? It is all getting close to the year end. So we have not filed our Q4 yet. So
I would
definitely
say,
make that move.
as an advisor, as my opinion, as much as you're done with ADP, I would finish the
Check it
year
out.
with ADP and start fresh with QuickBooks. Sign up now, get them ready for next year, and just don't even bother going through all that headache. Finish up.
Yeah.
And that would be my advice. I know you probably want to have them there at the end of the year.
Totally.
I would definitely, that would be my advice. Well, Sandy, I have to tell you, thank you so much. For more sessions like this one, check out QuickBooksConnect.com. QuickBooks Connect is now always on with all sessions available for free and ready to watch today. Thank you all so very much. Take care.
Thanks, Linda. Thanks for doing this. Bye, everybody.